know, the problem with talking about journeys on television these days is that television has rendered the word almost meaningless. Taking 3 steps across the studio floor to place a dish in front of the judges for tasting is not a journey, no matter how emotionally draining it might be for the cookery contestant involved. Cycling for 3 weeks over Alps, Pyrenees and roads rendered all but impassable by nutters in mankinis, now that is a journey. It's also, of course, a slightly simplified description of the Tour de France. And this year, as if to underline the madness and magnitude of the whole enterprise, the annual journey to Paris begins in Leeds. And from there it takes in some of the most spectacular parts of Yorkshire, with a stage 1 tour of the Dales on the way to Harrogate and some serious Pennine climbs on the road from York to Sheffield on stage 2. The final stage in the UK heads south for a finish on the Mall in London, by way of saying sorry for having chosen God's own country over the capital for this year's Grand Départ.
I feel very excited and very happy. There is such a passion for cycling, for the Tour here in Leeds in Yorkshire. I'm really impressed. All the villages with bicycles painted yellow, bunting, French flags, yellow flags. It's very, very impressive.
Now, what started out as the opening weekend of a sporting event has been stretched in all directions and ended up as a 100-day festival of bell ringing, polka dot painting, pulling grand pianos up Crag Vale, and anything else that could be loosely tied to the tour, including record-breaking lengths of homemade bunting. Such has been the community spirit that it feels a bit like London 2012, if London 2012 had included knitting. The enthusiasm even spread to the team presentation, which is usually an event with all the glamour of a school assembly, but in Yorkshire it was turned into a big night out, complete with Grand Départ official theme song. Chris Froome rolled onto the stage as favourite to defend the title he won in Paris last year and complete a hat-trick of wins for Team Sky. But the man who started the winning streak was a ghost at the feast and not a guest. As everybody knows by now, the Tour will start in Britain without Britain's most famous rider. Bradley Wiggins has been left out of the Sky team.
Were you a part of that decision-making process? Were you consulted? Was it your decision, I suppose, is what I'm asking?
No, definitely not. I mean, I had some general input with the director sportif, Nicolas Portal, and Dave would speak to me about certain riders, but it was definitely not my decision.
Well, obviously it's my decision, obviously, and wisely. I think what you do in my job is there are 2 sides to it. One's a logical side, and the other one's an emotional side. And for the past 15 years. I've selected teams, and the way that we've always selected teams, and the way I've always selected teams to take us from, let's face it, plucky losers 15 years ago to dominating the world, two Olympic Games, winning 2 Tour de France's. The shift in mindsets from one to the other comes from setting the bar high and at times making some very, very difficult decisions based on we want to try and win. And so for me, the approach to this situation was right. Given all the evidence and the facts and where we're at, the thinking is, what team could I select which would give us the best chance of winning? And at this moment in time, Chris is the leader. I don't think there's any denying that. And then, having established that, then you work back from there and think actually what would be the best team to support him to try and win. And it's as simple as that, really.
Do you feel like a favourite?
I don't like that word, the favourite.
Well, this time last year you most certainly were, and you rode like a favourite, and you stamped your authority all over the race. Are you in the same kind of place?
For myself personally, physically and mentally, I feel as if I'm in the same kind of form that I was in last year, for last year's tour. But the way I look at it is, I'm here as a contender, a realistic contender, the defending champion. I've got the backing of a fantastic team, and even more, we've got the privilege of having a home send-off, which is massive for us.
Stage 1 starts out like a school trip. A group of 198 herded off to Harwood House for a dose of British heritage before the flag drops and the race begins. There'll be a collective nod of respect in the direction of Lizzie Armitstead's house as the race hits Otley, but no doffing of headgear for the ride through Ilkley. Hats for spectators are optional. Once the peloton passes through Skipton, they'll be into the Yorkshire Dales National Park, where the towns thin out and the scenery takes over. The first climb of the day is the Côte de Cray, better known as Kidston's Pass to the locals. Then it's on to Wensleydale to introduce the French to the concept of cheese making, and the peloton to Buttertub's Pass. At 532 metres, it's the big climb of the day. It should be spectacular, those parts of it that aren't obscured by crowds. At Reeth in Swaledale, the race will mark its most northerly point, not just today but ever, before turning towards home via the third and final climb at Grinton. The ruins of Jervo Abbey and the splendour of Ripon Cathedral will be among the attractions on the run-in that we'll see from the helicopter, but the riders won't on the ground. Then it'll be elbows out for the first sprint of the 2014 Tour in Harrogate. And that sprint will be a rare chance for Mark Cavendish to take the first yellow jersey of the race. If he does, it'll be the first of his career, and also make him the first British rider ever to wear it on British roads, so no pressure.
Tell me about stage one. It's an unusual opening sprinter stage, isn't it? It's testing, and the finish is complex. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's the same for everybody, that's the thing, you know. It does offer some launch pads for attacks, but it also provides a straight running for the sprinters as well. So if the teams can be their control, it should be a sprint. Like I said before, it's the same for everybody. Everybody has to work the tactics around different circumstances in parkours, and hopefully it'll be a good race at the end, and we're putting a good show for the organisers and spectators here in Harrogate.
Now, down at the start in Leeds, huge crowds were expected, and huge crowds materialised. Ned Bolting was among them.
Well, to say that excitement levels in Leeds have reached fever pitch would normally be something of an exaggeration, but in this case, I will go with that line, because the Grand Départ is just a few minutes away after what feels like years of anticipation. I've been travelling up and down from Yorkshire regularly over the last weeks, and it is quite genuinely extraordinary how the county has taken to this race and the amount of efforts they've gone to welcome the Tour de France. It's here now, and all morning from 6 o'clock onwards, the trains pulling into Leeds station have just been disgorging hundreds and thousands of people who are now, well, pretty much here, looking forward to seeing the whole shenanigans pass in front of their eyes. The publicity caravan's here, parked up round the corner. The riders are here in the team buses, just waiting to sign on. And the race, as far as I'm concerned, as far as all these people here for the Grand Départ in Leeds are concerned, is ready to go.
And very shortly afterwards, it went. Now, the rollout is always a ceremonial rather than actual start to a stage, but this was more ceremonial than most, because it took the peloton out to Harewood and into the grounds of Harwood House, where the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry were waiting to greet them. Lots of dodgy-looking helmet hair in the peloton as they all doffed their hats for the national anthems. First in the royal reception, the four British riders in the race: Mark Cavendish, Geraint Thomas, Chris Froome, and 21-year-old Simon Yates making his debut for Orica Greenedge. The Red Arrows performed a flypast, with the red, white and blue Vapor Trail doing diplomatic double duty for the nation of the race and the Grand Départ. And once the royal scissors had been delivered on a cushion and put to use on the race ribbon, the 198 riders rolled back out of the grounds and onto the open road, where Tour Director Christian Prudhomme dropped the flag.
So is the road, and that's what's happened. The road, I told you about these small little hills, it's blown Katusha out of the action because of this rise, but in fact Amiga Pharma Quickstep have chosen the moment, with Tony Martin on the far right, to bring Mark Cavendish into play. So instead of destroying Mark Cavendish, this is helping him.
Cavendish has got a red peak on his hat there. There you can see red, white and blue. He's got an aerodynamic helmet on this afternoon. He's looking for every little bit of an advantage to put himself into place. All of a sudden, it was as if the nod was there. Calm down a bit. We don't want to lead out. We need firepower. We need as many men as possible. They've announced the colour now, Phil. 3.5 kilometres to go. That's 4.5 minutes to get to the finishing line. They're in control, but have they gone too far out?
I don't think they have. 3.6 kilometres, the determination on the face here of Amiga Pharma Quickstep, a Belgian team trying to guide a rider who was brought up in Harrogate to the line first to present a yellow jersey, which he will receive from the royal family. It's all too much, but he's the last man in the line. He's in the perfect position. He's pushed Lotto Belisol into the second wings with Andre Greipel for the moment.
You mentioned earlier Giant Shimano, the team of Marcel Kittel, who'd got their lead-out train worked out to perfection this season. But I think these riders here, Omega Pharma Quickstep, they've practiced to perfection a number of times throughout the course of this year. Bringing Mark Renshaw back into the mix could be extremely important for Mark Cavendish. The two of them, when they raced together on HTC, they didn't need to talk. There was almost a symbiotic relationship between the two of them. Renshaw knew when to start his sprint because he knew just how far Cavendish could go on his own.
Another little rise coming. Are they going to survive this one? Because that's provided the opportunity for Lotto Belisol to get back into the action here now. Omega Pharma Quickstep are fighting to hold front position. They want nobody now to come up on them. Mark Cavendish just staying locked in on the team he has 100% faith in. Greipel has moved to the left of our picture, staying with his team. And Peter Sagan is coming up in the middle with his team. They're going into the last 2 kilometres.
The former champion of Holland is on the front for Omega Pharma Quickstep. That's Nicky Terpstra, the winner this year, excuse me please, of Paris-Roubaix. Today he's working for Cavendish. It's now Omega Pharma Quickstep back in control at the front end of this race. The man who almost won the Tour of Switzerland is in second position, Tony Martin there, 3 times world champion, reigning world champion in the individual time trial. 1.9 kilometres to go. That's going to be less than 2 minutes now. On the left-hand side, you might just have noticed, trying to come forward in the other black and white strip is that's Giant Shimano. Cavendish now is just sitting there. He's got to close his eyes, concentrate on the wheel of the rider in front of him, and that's got to be Mark Renshaw.
Mark knows if they show him the finishing line with a clean pair of wheels, he will win. But there's a rush on the right side. Cofidis are trying to spoil the party here. The French team are pulling through on the right, and that's going to disrupt the sprinters. Only Omega Pharma's Quickstep keeping control on our right as we look at the pictures.
Well, that's just a little bit of confusion. You saw them move forward there from Cofidis, but they don't have the firepower to continue. Look how ragged they are now. They've split to pieces. All of a sudden, they're all over the place. They were just trying to move a rider to the front. Tony Martin now is in control, but he's getting challenged there by Giant Shimano. They're keeping it nice and calm here. The 2 big teams of the 2 big sprinters are right in control of this main field. They're looking for the final kilometre. They're looking for the final charge down towards the finishing line. There's a move over on the left from Trek Factory Racing, trying to create the surprise on the climb. That looks like the shape of Fabian Cancellara.
It is an attack by Fabian Cancellara, who has gone clear, and this is what we call a cheeky move to disrupt the whole of the situation here. As we start to go up towards the finish, it's a desperate. He's done it before, Paul. He's done it when we've come into Compiègne in the past, and this is a great move by the man we call Fabulous Cancellara. Spartacus is his nickname.
When he won the stage into Compiègne, he had a yellow jersey on his shoulders. He's coming over the top now. He's charging down towards where the traffic lights were last night. Now he's got the kick up towards the finishing line. He's got a gap. There's not many men can pull this off, and they're looking ragged behind. They realise Fabian Cancellara may have created the surprise this afternoon. 500 metres to go.
Cavendish has got to come, and he's too far down here. Cancellara's not going to make it. Kittle's going to try and get in. He's getting led out by Degenkolb, but there's been a crash there. Gerrans has gone down on the line. A touch of wheels as the breakaway goes clear now, and it's going to be Peter Sagan, and Kittel is challenging him. Kittel and Sagan trying to go for the line here. It's going to be a desperately close finish, but it's going to be the same as last year. Marcel Kittel takes victory on the line, and again as the result as a crash, and that is a terrible scene for us on the road. A touch of wheels and Mark Cavendish in all sorts of trouble when it should have been a day of glory for him. That's so sad. There was the touch, there was elbows there. Cavendish leaning on Simon Gerrans, and then the earth gave way and they both went down on the floor.
Well, let's have a look at this. You can see, I'd like to see whose fault it is. Gerrans is closing the door there. You can see that Cavendish is trying to go through the gap. Gerrans mixing it. Difficult to say whose fault it was there. Cavendish was underneath Gerrans. Gerrans was in front. They went down very hard.
Very hard, and almost right in front of the VIP stand where Mark Cavendish's horrified mother was standing 2 spots down from David Cameron. It was 3.5 minutes later that Cav got up and rolled in, holding his arm in the familiar position of a man who's broken his collarbone. He got into the ambulance to be taken off for x-rays. Simon Gerrans was up and chipper enough to be giving post-race interviews.
I'm not exactly sure what happened just yet. I'll be obviously watching the replay when I get back to the hotel. I think it'll be replayed over a few times, but yeah, it's pretty unfortunate to get tangled up in a crash so close to the finish.
Now, it looks like Mark's gone off to hospital, but what about yourself?
Yeah, I won't be going off to hospital. Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit stiff and sore tomorrow, and I've lost a bit of skin, but yeah, I think I'm all still in one piece.
Now, whether or not the crash would have affected the stage result, we'll never know, but Marcel Kittel was a clear winner from Peter Sagan and Ramūnas Nevadauskas. Brian Kokar was 4th, Michael Rogers 5th, Chris Froome a surprising 6th, ahead of Alexander Kristoff and Sepp van Mark. Fabian Cancellara, who contributed to the chaos with his late attack, came in 11th. Geraint Thomas 17th, one place up on Andre Greipel. Alberto Contador, Vincenzo Nibali and Simon Yates all finished in the main group on the same time as the winner. And despite being 192nd, Mark Cavendish lost no time because his crash was inside the final 3 kilometres. Well, he bookended last year's tour with wins on stages 1 and 21, and he started the same way. For all the talk of rarity of yellow jerseys in the tour career of a sprinter, Marcel Kittel now has 2.
I'm very, very happy that I could win that stage today. I'm so proud. It's actually a very emotional win because there was quite some pressure. It's a big relief to be the first again today, and yeah, it's something that I will never forget in my life.
Just a word on Mark Cavendish, because he fell. You don't want to see that in a fellow sprinter, so what would be your message to him tonight?
Yeah, I hope he gets well soon. I don't know how badly he's injured. I hope he's all right, and yeah, then I'm looking forward to see him tomorrow in the race again, so I wish him all the best.